We're not claiming that digging certain sites will unleash ancient curses or tear open gateways to other realms, but we're not denying it either. What we do know is that history has a disturbing habit of exposing secrets that can send shivers down your spine. Some findings illuminate how our ancestors once lived, while others uncover horrors that should have remained lost. From mass burial sites to ominous relics, the past isn't always as enchanting as we'd like to believe. These are the moments when history turns from mere legend into a chilling reminder of what humanity is truly capable of. Here are 15 of the most terrifying discoveries ever uncovered in all of human history. Number 15. Dozens of shackled skeletons. It started like any other construction project: dig up the ground and lay some pipes. But in 2016, downtown Athens delivered something way worse than utility lines. They found over 1,500 ancient skeletons. Among them, one pit stood out. Inside, 80-plus young men, all healthy, all dead, and all with iron shackles still binding their wrists. Some were dumped face down. Some are stacked like cargo. All of them were executed. Historians traced it back to 632 BC, a failed coup by an Olympic champion turned wannabe tyrant named Cylon. He escaped. His followers didn't. The Athenians made sure of that, quickly, brutally, and without a trace of ceremony. But what really messes with your head is the fact that they left the chains on. That wasn't protocol. That was a message. Why? Well, maybe it was fear. Maybe it was rage. Maybe they thought these rebels might rise again, either politically or literally. Either way, the scene reads like a warning carved into the dirt. In ancient Athens, rebellion wasn't just crushed, it was buried alive. Number 14. The Screaming Mummy. They called him Man-E, but that nickname doesn't do justice to the horror on his face. We mean, just look at that, found in 1886, and wrapped in nothing more than sheepskin, this ancient Egyptian mummy looked like he died mid-scream, jaw locked wide open, limbs contorted, hands and feet tightly bound. No golden sarcophagus, no ornate burial, just raw terror, frozen in time. Unlike other royal mummies, he wasn't embalmed. His internal organs were still there, untouched. That alone was weird. But then came the real theory. Man-E might have been Prince Pentawr, the disgraced son of Pharaoh Ramesses III, who was wrapped up in a failed plot to kill his father. If that's true, his punishment wasn't just death, it was erasure. Some think he was poisoned. Others say he was buried alive. His final expression backs the second one. Egyptians believed in peace after death. But this guy? He was thrown into the afterlife, kicking and screaming, cursed to spend eternity with that terror carved across his face. Number 13. The Altamora Man. He wasn't buried or fell in battle. He didn't die in some grand Neanderthal ritual. Altamora Man died alone in a cave around 150,000 years ago, probably after falling into a sinkhole deep in Italy's La Malunga system. There were no mourners, no fire, just time and limestone. Discovered in 1993, his bones had fused into the cave walls, encased in calcite and stone, like the earth slowly swallowed him over the centuries. He wasn't touched for decades. Too fragile, too embedded. But in 2015, researchers finally got a piece of his shoulder and confirmed it. Neanderthal, and not just any. One of the oldest, most intact Neanderthals ever found. Laser scans gave us his face, thick brow, wide jaw, heavy stare, and it's the kind of look that doesn't just tell you how early humans lived, it tells you how they died. Alone, forgotten, preserved not by ritual or love, but by accident. He's not a fossil, he's a memory the cave refused to let go. Number 12. The Aztec Shrieking Death Whistles. You don't need a battlefield to feel fear. Just blow into one of these things. Found clutched in the hands of a skeleton near a temple in Mexico City, the Aztec death whistles don't just make noise, they scream, literally. The sound they produce is an unholy screech, like a man being torn apart while begging the gods to stop. Some say they were used in sacrifices. Picture it. Someone tied down, heart ripped out, and a row of priests blasting these skull-shaped horrors while the crowd watched. Others say they were war tools, psychological weapons. Imagine hundreds of warriors approaching, every single one blowing that same blood-curdling wail. Even steel armor wouldn't protect you from the sound alone. They weren't just musical instruments. They were fear you could hear, terror turned into wind. The Aztecs knew what sound could do to the mind, and they used it without mercy. These whistles weren't made for songs. They were made for screams. Number 11. The man-eating animals of Teotihuacan. When people say the gods were hungry, well, they weren't joking. In the ruins of Teotihuacan, archaeologists uncovered something that rewrote everything we thought we knew about ritual sacrifice. A chamber used to hold jaguars, wolves, and pumas, well-fed, very alive, and extremely not friendly. The animals weren't just for show. Bones of humans, mangled, torn, and chewed, were found right beside them. Tests revealed the beasts were eating maize-fed meat, but not directly. The maize came from humans who had consumed it, which means the animals weren't eating crops, they were eating sacrificed people. Wall murals nearby confirmed it. Priests dragging victims into the dens, animals tearing them apart. Some were eaten alive, others were thrown in, already dying. Either way, it wasn't symbolic. It was carnage. A brutal, deliberate offering to the gods, carried out by jaws and claws. The priests didn't just spill blood. They fed it. It was a system. A religious machine that kept the gods fed and the people terrified. Number 10. A mysterious Japanese sit mermaid sit mummy. At first glance, it looks like something dragged from the nightmares of a drowned fisherman. The so-called mermaid mummy at Enjuan Temple was once believed to hold divine powers, offering protection, health, and maybe even immortality. Now that's just awesome. Who doesn't want to live forever? Said to be caught in the 1700s off the coast of Kochi, it was displayed as a sacred relic for centuries. But legend only carries you so far. In 2022, scientists finally got access and scanned it. What they found wasn't half fish, half woman. It was a handmade chimera, crafted from monkey bones, fish skin, wire, and paper. The mouth was stitched open in a grotesque grin. It wasn't a hoax meant to fool, it was a talisman, a desperate spiritual gesture from people who needed hope. Whether it was built to protect or impress, one thing is clear, it wasn't made for laughs. This thing was built with intention, with belief, and even now, centuries later, it still draws eyes and questions. Not because it's real, but because it was meant to be. Number 9. Bog bodies. You don't expect the dead to stare back at you with eyelashes still intact, but in Europe's peat bogs, the past doesn't rot. It waits, and it is more terrifying than Trump's hair. Bog bodies are ancient corpses preserved by cold, acidic, oxygen-deprived earth. The Toland man, unearthed in Denmark in 1950, looked like he was just napping until you noticed the noose still wrapped around his neck. These weren't accidents. Many were deliberate killings, sacrifices, executions. The Koldjurg man, found in Denmark, dates back to 8000 BCE, but others, like the Graubaal man, died with throats slit clean. Their last meals were still in their stomachs. Their hair was perfectly in place. It's eerie, intimate preservation that strips away the romanticism of ancient life. No pyramids, no treasure, just mud, rope, and quiet violence. Every wrinkle and bruise tells a story, but not always one we can translate. What's left are frozen expressions, stitched into time by the earth itself, grim snapshots of a past that still refuses to decompose. Number 8. Pit of Death. Well now, this is totally terrifying. France, 2012. A construction site in Bergheim grinds to a halt when workers hit something solid, not bedrock, bones. A pit just over 6 feet deep and 5 feet across, packed tight with dismembered human remains, arms piled like firewood, finger bones, infant skeletons, and the mangled corpse of a middle-aged man with a cracked skull and a missing arm. Carbon dating puts the chaos at over 5,000 years old. This wasn't a burial. This was a purge. 7 full skeletons were dumped on top, their bodies layered without care. At least 7 severed arms were tossed in beneath them. Some archaeologists believe it was tribal warfare. Others think it was execution, Neolithic justice, carried out with stone tools and no second thoughts. There's no written record, no carved explanation, just hacked limbs, cracked bones, and the lingering echo of prehistoric violence. We don't know what happened in that pit, but we know it wasn't mercy. It was a message, delivered in the flesh, buried in silence. Number 7. The Filipino fire mummies. Before colonizers ever touched the Philippines, the Abaloy people had already mastered a funerary ritual that puts most ancient cultures to shame. Their method? Well, it was simple. Turn the dying into their own preservers. In the final days of life, the person drank salt water to begin dehydration. After death, the body was smoked over low heat for weeks, sometimes months. This wasn't just about drying the flesh. Tobacco smoke was pumped into the mouth and lungs to dry the organs from the inside out. Then came the final step, placing the shriveled body in a hand-carved wooden coffin the size of a backpack and stashing it inside burial caves carved into cliffs. The result? Mummies with preserved skin, tattoos still visible, facial expressions locked in time. Spanish colonization tried to stamp it out in the 1500s, but the caves remained guarded, sacred, and rarely entered. These weren't monsters, they were honored ancestors, preserved not for fear, but for reverence, and they're still watching. But we don't lie, they look super scary. Number 6. Polish sea vampire set burials. In Poland's Drosko Cemetery, archaeologists uncovered burials that looked less like funerals and more like preparation for war against the dead. Bodies were laid to rest with sickles pressed across their throats or heavy stones jammed under their chins. These weren't accidents. They were vampire precautions. The graves date back to the 17th century when cholera outbreaks were ripping through villages. The cause was invisible, but the fear was not. Locals believed the dead weren't staying dead, so they made sure of it. Severing heads, pinning jaws shut, slicing necks with iron blades, just in case one of them decided to come back. Modern science says it was a disease. Panic is superstition, but superstition gets real fast when people are dropping dead in days. These burials weren't about ritual, they were about control. Fear made people turn their loved ones into potential monsters, and the shovels didn't stop at the grave. They kept digging right into myth. What do you think about this trend? Well, let us know. Now let's move to number 5. Remnants of a witch hunt. Tucked in a chapel in Aberdeen, Scotland, there's a cold iron ring set into an old stone pillar. It's easy to miss, unless you know what it was for. Back in the late 1500s, this was a tool of torture used during one of the bloodiest witch hunts in Scottish history. The accused were shackled to it, interrogated, humiliated, and often condemned long before a trial even happened. Aberdeen's Great Witch Hunt of 1597 wasn't some fringe panic. It was full-blown systemic paranoia. Over 400 people were accused. Nearly 200 were executed within 8 months, strangled and burned in public, often based on nothing more than hearsay or bad weather. Jane Wishart and her son Thomas Laius were 2 such victims. Their story didn't end in flames, it ended in silence, buried under the weight of hysteria. That iron ring? It's not just a relic, it's a warning. A reminder of what people are capable of when fear replaces reason and cruelty gets called justice. Number 4. Neanderthal cannibals. El Cedrón Cave in Spain doesn't look like the site of prehistoric horror. But in 2010, it gave up a brutal secret: the butchered remains of at least 12 Neanderthals, including men, women, children, and even an infant. Their bones were snapped open, stripped clean, and burned in fire pits. The marks weren't random, they were deliberate. Archaeologists found evidence of marrow extraction, skull smashing, and tool marks that matched techniques used for processing animal meat. There were no Homo sapiens in the area at the time, meaning the killers weren't outsiders, they were family. Other Neanderthals. It's one thing to eat to survive, but this was cold, calculated, and ritualistic. Starvation is the most likely trigger. Food shortages hit hard in the Ice Age, and when it came down to dying or eating the dead, survival won. The discovery shattered the idea of the Neanderthal as a gentle cousin. This wasn't just desperation, it was brutally hardwired into ancient life, and it leaves us wondering how close we really are. Number 3. Ancient chemical warfare. 2,000 years ago, in the Syrian city of Dura Europos, Roman soldiers didn't die by sword or spear. They suffocated in tunnels, clawing at their own armor as their lungs filled with toxic gas. This wasn't an accident. It was one of the earliest known uses of chemical warfare. During a Persian siege, engineers dug beneath the city walls. The Romans responded with counter-tunnels, but the Persians laid a trap. They packed their tunnel with bitumen and sulfur, lit it, and waited. When the Romans broke through, the chemical reaction released a choking cloud of sulfur dioxide. It burned the eyes, lungs, and throat. The Roman soldiers collapsed in place, some still holding weapons, some trying to turn back. Excavations in the 1920s revealed 20 skeletons twisted in agony, buried under rubble. This wasn't battlefield chaos, it was calculated as suffocation. It proves ancient warfare wasn't just brute strength. It was ingenuity mixed with cruelty, and a lesson that the science of war has always been about making sure your enemy never sees it coming. Number 2. Tzompantli. For years, people thought the stories were Spanish exaggerations, piles of skulls stacked like pyramids to demonize the Aztecs. But in 2015, archaeologists found the real thing beneath Mexico City. 119 human skulls arranged in an eerie formation, all part of a structure once towering with hundreds more. The Tzompantli wasn't a myth, it was architectural horror. Originally believed to hold only war captives, the remains told another story. Women, elders, children, none were spared the obsidian blades. Sacrifices weren't selective, they were systemic. Skulls were drilled, mounted, and displayed to show the gods and everyone else that blood was being paid. Some faces were converted into masks, eyes replaced with stone, and blades jammed into nasal cavities. This wasn't just brutality, it was aesthetics, terror with pageantry. And politically, the Aztecs knew how to use it. Bigger tribute demands went to stronger states. Smaller ones were spared to avoid rebellion. In a twisted way, the Tzompantli was a monument to both power and economic logic. Number 1. The whistling terror bullets. Most ancient weapons killed you quietly. These were designed to scream while they did it. In Scotland's Burnswark Hill, archaeologists found Roman sling bullets, lemon-sized lead projectiles from 1,800 years ago. Some were normal, but others had tiny, deliberate holes drilled through them. Why? They didn't know, until one researcher's brother, a fisherman, pointed out the obvious. Those holes would whistle, and when tested, they did, emitting a sharp, eerie screech as they flew. It wasn't enough just to injure someone. The Romans wanted fear to hit before the stone did. These weren't battlefield leftovers, they were terror tools. Hundreds of them fired in waves, creating a disorienting soundscape meant to rattle nerves before the real killing even started. Think of it as ancient psychological warfare, less about precision, more about chaos. The fustabalus, a sling staff, gave them deadly range, but the whistle gave them presence, a sound you couldn't dodge, a death you could hear coming long before it broke your bones. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.